Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today we're talking about the top baits for bass fishing in February. It may still be the middle of winter. It may be bitter cold, but the bass know that springtime is coming. Yeah, that's right, springtime. February brings a really special transition. Bass start just the earliest little bit of a shift towards springtime patterns as we move through February. And that creates a huge change in the way that we're fishing. You can still finesse fish, you can still do all the things that you've been doing, but you no longer have to. Now, the funny thing about February is that this huge change will happen during the month. So typically early February, the first week or two, I'm still doing all the heart of winter things. But as we transition into the middle of the month, the deck of my boat will transform completely to springtime power fishing. Yes, it is still frigid cold. The fish don't care. They know that it's coming and they start positioning for it regardless of what the daytime temperatures and the nighttime temperatures are right now. They just make the move anyway. So we'll see a big change as we move through this month. So for each one of these baits, I've got sort of a early month versus late month because there are some major differences. I got it down to 6. I said 5. I'm actually narrowed down to 6 categories here. But this time of year, for me, it's all power fishing. These are in no particular order. Let's just jump into it. The first one is an underspin. The underspin is one of those baits that just catches them as we move through February. Bass start shifting back into the shallows. In some lakes, that water is crystal clear. In other lakes, it's murky. Regardless, adding a blade to your swim bait can make all the difference. Underspins are special this time of year. They just catch them. Both of these were designed by Tim and I. These are the tactical underspins. This is the Tactical Mini. It's got the little tiny swammer on the back of it. Here's the big difference. This is our standard underspin. The big difference is that the Mini, this little guy, all of the head sizes have the same hook. That's the hook in all of them. So you can pair it up perfectly to all the little finesse baits. Our standard underspin, you have different hook sizes as the weight of the head changes, so you can pair it to various swim bait sizes. Depending on your fishery, if your fishery is very finessey, stick to those really small swim baits. But if you're on a lake that's got a lot of bigger shad in it, you can upsize right away. You know, start throwing a 4.75 swammer or a 4.8 Kitech, things like that, catching some of those bigger fish. But as the fish are pushing shallow, you've got to remember that those fish have not been targeted in the shallows since last fall. So they tend to not be as wary of the bass fishing pressure as they will be later on in the spring. They tend to just be up there to hunt. They're there to eat. They're there to transition. As a result, it's all about getting their attention. That's why we use that blade. We want maximum drawing power because, again, these fish typically are not leery. They're not looking out for you. They're up there to eat, and it's all about finding the bait first. Adding a blade, throwing an underspin instead of a bare swim bait, just increases the distance that they feel that bait from, and they're willing to come and get it. Next up, let's talk about the lipless. We're going to call it a lipless category because, again, we're talking about that transitional time. Early in the month, I'm going to continue with the blade bait. This is the Demiki Vault, the 1/2 ounce size. If I could only have one, that's the one. Hopping that thing on the bottom, just barely get it to flutter up and then let it fall back. Hop, let it fall. Hop, let it fall. That vault is such a fish catcher, and it has been all winter. But as these fish are pushing up on that bank, they're going to do it in droves. It's not like one fish goes up in the shallows by itself. They're almost always in schools. That's what you're looking for. So when you fire them up, they get really aggressive. As we roll through the month, I'll lean away from the blade and into the actual lipless crankbait. Here are two for you. The smaller one is from Nomad. That's a Swimtrex Max. That's the 1/2 ounce. The larger is a Jackal TN70. These baits are amazing for fluttering on the bottom, doing that bottom hop. When do I throw one versus the other? When do I throw the lipless versus the blade? Okay, just like the underspin, it's all about drawing power. Same thing here. If they will eat a lipless, throw the lipless. The sound, the vibration, it's reaching farther. It will pull the fish from a further distance. So if they will eat it, I'm throwing the lipless. But if they won't eat it, if I'm throwing it, nothing's happening, I throw that blade. The blade will catch them. The blade is more subtle and it tends to work better in the colder water. So again, it's a 1-2 punch and it's driven entirely by what they are willing to eat. Next up, again, no particular order on any of this. The shallow crankbait. Let's talk about that. Shallow cranking. I get so pumped just knowing that that is coming back into my arsenal. I love shallow cranking. The second those fish move up, that's what I'm doing with my time. Speed cranking, but with square bills and shallow cranks instead of deep crank. Burn, 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 pause, burn, pause, burn, burn, pause. The fish will tend, when they go shallow, they tend to get right up against cover first. They're not used to being in that shallow water anymore. So when they go up there, they tend to sit up against something. They don't just go out in the open very often. So it's really easy to take a square bill and run it right up around cover. You'll run it up to a stump, pause, run past the stump, pause. Boom, those fish freight train it. Now, what baits are we throwing? Earlier in the month, I lean heavy on the flat-sided baits, okay? If I need something smaller, a Spro Little John. If I can get away with something bigger, the Rapala OG Slim. Significant size difference here. Both work incredibly well. And these work in the middle of winter if your fish are shallow. Those flat sides give off a very unique vibration, and the fish will eat them in that cold, cold water. But as soon as it starts warming up, as soon as the fish are willing, I make the switch over to a true square bill. That square bill deflects off of cover better. The baits are more aggressive. They don't snag up as much. And I'm able to cover some serious water. These two, if you have seen us fish anytime in the last couple of years, you know exactly what these are. The Rapala Rocco, one of the best square bills that you can get. That bait has the fastest startup speed of any square bill that I've ever found. Meaning if I want to get aggressive, work it around stumps, around rocks, around wood, or dog pilings, anything like that, where I want to start and stop, it starts and pauses faster than any other bait. So it is more aggressive, more reactive, and can draw fish better than anything else. Then we've got this guy, the Bill Lewis ATV. This bait is incredible. This is the most snag resistant square bill I have ever seen. You can throw this into a laid down tree, burn it through, and it will not snag the branches. I have no idea how it works. Well, really I do. It has to do with the bill angle, but it is incredible how well it does deflecting off of cover. So you can throw it, I mean, anywhere in the thickest junk and it will come through it. The amazing thing is when a fish eats it, it still hooks them. But just an incredible bait. The Rocco and the ATV are the ultimate 1-2 punch. I am so excited to get back into the season where we can throw those. Next up is the A-Rig. The A-Rig has been going all winter, right? It was going all fall, it's going all winter. but it will continue into the spring and the bite will get even more special. Again, fish that are pushing the shallows, they're there to eat. They're serious about it. They're bulking back up. They will run down a school of bait fish. Now, the size of the rig has to do with the size of the bait fish in your lake, okay? We designed the whole Tactical Flex series with Hog Farmer. So we've got our full line of tactical rigs, from the micro, the mini, the full size. Now we've got the 5 hook. You've got so many different options, but it all comes down to the size of the bait fish in your lake. If you're struggling to get bit on an A-rig, or fishing an A-rig is uncomfortable for you, they're heavy, they're cumbersome, you don't want to use all that heavy gear, the Tactical Micro is an amazing little rig. It hardly weighs more than a spinnerbait. You can sling it on your standard gear. You know, you can throw it on a 610 medium all the way up to a 7.2, 7.5 medium heavy. You could throw it on 12-pound fluoro. I've thrown it on spinning rods. You could throw it up on 15 or 18 if you want to, but you don't have to. You can throw it on any of the rods you already own and it will flat catch them. So again, you're matching the size of the bait fish, the smaller rig for the smaller swim baits, upsize to a bigger rig with bigger baits. But if you don't enjoy throwing an A-rig, but you know that bass are eating them, that micro rig is the deal. All right, we've got 2 more categories here. We're flying through these. The next one up is jerkbaits. Okay. I've got 2 for you. They're very different. Again, earlier and later. We've got the Megabass Vision 110. That bait is the staple. In this category, in the jerkbait category, everything is judged against a Megabass 110. Early February, that water's still cold. You want to work that jerkbait slow and you want to let it sit. Those fish are moving up. Oftentimes they're out on that first break, so you can work that jerkbait out over the top of them and then just let it pause. 3, 5, even a 10-second pause to catch those fish. That bait is perfect for that. As we move through the month, I love to throw this bait. This is from Shimano. This is called the Zoomverno 95 SP. You can see the flash boost in there doing its job. See how it's shimmering even when it's sitting still? That secondary action helps that bait catch a lot of fish. This bait has a ton of flash and a very aggressive dart. Really cold water, wintertime, it is not my bait. But the second they go shallow, the second they're chasing bait fish, I love this thing. I can cover a ton of water, I can fish it fast, I can fish it aggressive, and they respond to it. Now, one more bait, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. It's not even a curveball, it's just a little tip to help you. Everybody loves the 110, that's no secret. But as those fish push shallow, now in some lakes, shallow is relative, right? But I'm thinking northern end of Clear Lake in California, you know, some of your Florida impoundments that are so shallow for so far. I mean, when these fish go shallow, they go shallow. The 110, if you get that thing down and you start crashing rock, you know in that cold water, you can break those baits, you can do a lot of damage. This is the 110 FX. If you're not familiar with this bait, look at the lip. See how the lip folds up? Okay, that was a bait they designed for more castability, but it just so happens that the FX version of the 110 runs just a little shallower than the standard 110. The bait is the exact same. The only difference is that lip moves, but there's just a little bit of a change in that lip angle and it will go shallower. So if you are a shallow guy in the spring and you haven't thrown the FX, you're missing an opportunity to get up there just a little bit shallower. And then last but not least is going to be the big swim bait. Big is relative, you know, and when it comes to swim baits, we could be talking soft baits or hard baits. Both should be on deck. These are 2 of my favorites. This from Megabass, that's the 8-inch mag draft. The mag draft is an incredible fish catching bait. I have more confidence in this swim bait than probably any other soft bait in early spring. It didn't used to be that way. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I have built so much confidence in the mag draft. I can skip it under docks. I can run it up shallow. I can slow down and fish it out deep. I can do everything with that one bait, just slow rolling that bait. The 8-inch has incredible drawing power. The 6-inch, the smaller bait, is still a fantastic bait, but it won't pull fish as far as the 8 will. So if you're going to focus on one, I would focus all your attention on the 8-inch in February, and you've got a shot at catching a true giant. Now, I also throw a glide bait a lot. The second fish goes shallow. I personally am looking for very aggressive, very darty baits. Baits that I can work and twitch and pop and cut. And I can be really aggressive with them around that shallow cover. And this one, the Trick Shad from the Buka brand, this is a bait that has really, I got a hold of one of these at ICAST last year before they even came out. I walked out of the show with one and just went out and wailed on the fish with it. Just wailed on them. And I've been so impressed with that bait. It's a really good size. So it's a 6-inch bait, so it's not very big, but it's tall. So you've still got a full profile, a lot of drawing power. And I'm able to fish this bait really fast, really snappy, really aggressive. I can twitch it well. I can pause it because it sinks fairly slowly. I can work it quick around cover, or I can work it slow and let it stall out in front of that cover. And it just does an amazing job of pulling fish out. No matter which one of these categories you enjoy throwing, all of these are going to do some serious damage this month. February is an amazing time to be on the water. Again, ignore the temperature outside because it will lie to you. The temperature will tell you it is still the middle of winter and these fish are still locked down. You still got to go deep, or you've still got to finesse. But the fish make the move long before we can feel it. They know what is coming, and these patterns, like clockwork, will start happening whether or not you know it. This year you should be in front of it, not behind it, because it is such a fun way to catch them. In the video description, I'll link all of these baits in the order that we talked about them. And I'll also give you Tim and I's favorite colors for each one of them, just our personal confidence colors. So if you want to try one of these, you know what we would be throwing in your situation. In addition to that, if there's room, I'll link some really good budget-friendly rods for throwing these baits as well. Guys, this is a fun time of year. Get out there, catch some of these fish. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.